Hey, my name is Ginger Schultz, and tonight I'll be speaking to you about the culture of Sweden and how to better communicate in their unique cultural climate, as well as conversational climate. So when looking at a country or the culture of a country, one of the main components of any culture is religion. So in all Nordic countries, including Denmark, Norway, Finland, Iceland, and of course Sweden, the Lutheran Church has dominated as the major religion since the 16th century, and it also has a very high percentage of church affiliation. Sweden is also characterized as a secular state. Only in the later half of the 19th century did church and state dissolve. So 87% of Swedes identify as being a part of the Lutheran Church, and the remaining 13%, the highest one is Roman Orthodoxy, followed by other sects of Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, and other religions of that nature. Sweden is home to more than 8.9 million people and experienced relative social homogeny until the later half of the 20th century, where it was transformed into a diverse and multicultural society by immigration and the acceptance of refugees from bordering nations such as Yugoslavia. Also included in their population is the indigenous people of the Samis, which number between 17,000 and 20,000. And most Swedish citizens speak both Swedish, of course, and English as their second language, as it's taught in every school. Immigrant languages also number up to 200, and the cool thing that I found out was that the Swedish public school systems allow and almost encourage immigrant children to learn in their native language and eventually move over to learning in Swedish, as they don't want to impede the learning process. Sweden itself is characterized as a social democracy. It embraces ideas of equality and mutual care. This is seen in examples such as the state-provided daycares in elderly homes, hospitals, and also communal music schools. It's also considered to be a welfare state in some aspects, which emphasizes full employment, economic and gender equality, as well as full access to state benefits and services. Economics and politics are run on a fine line between capitalism and socialism, and this has been able to be done by the fact that Sweden has been a sovereign state for hundreds of years, which has allowed for gradual development. Also, Sweden is considered an egalitarian state compared to all other countries because of the fact that women and men are most equal in Sweden compared to other countries. The state also encourages a balance between family and paid employment. This is seen through the example of both men and women having maternity and paternity leave for a year with paid benefits, of course, which isn't very common to be seen. Immigrants are also allowed full access to the welfare system, can vote in local elections, and become citizens in 5 years. And the reason why it's important to share information about the Swedish state is that it allows the unique perspective to kind of develop and for us to have an insight of what it would be like to communicate in that environment. The values placed in Nordic cultures have been in place for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And one of the main components of Swedish life is what's called Jante law. And it has been accepted into Swedish culture, and literally means don't believe that you are any better than anyone else. Modesty is also highly valued, as well as the practice of saving face. Generally, emotions are not openly revealed, or rather I should say negative emotions, so you wouldn't complain to someone that you had just met, as that seemed as a very negative quality in a person. Above all, including saving face, honesty is valued at the highest point. So as long as you're conveying your honest opinion respectfully, it would be seen as respectable action, whereas shouting your opinion or interrupting someone, saying that's not right or it should be done this way, would be seen as a very, very negative quality in a person in that culture. Pride is also an imperative characteristic in Nordic cultures, both nationally and within the family. For instance, all members of the community perform civic duty, or what's called dugnad, in which one contributes back to the community. So, for instance, community service and even paying back into taxes, which is how the welfare system was and is able to support the Swedish population. Moving on to the behaviors of the cultures in Sweden. When communicating in Sweden, it's important to distinguish the fine line between public and private life. You would keep all relations separate. So, for instance, you wouldn't go to work and talk about intimate relations, as that can be seen as a very negative quality. In most situations, titles or last names are rarely used after the first introduction. So once you would be properly introduced, you would drop the Mr., Mrs., Doctor, whatever, as it's seen as furthering the distance between you and that other person. Personal space is also extremely important in Swedish culture. It's said to at least remain at an arm's length. And generally, when conversing, keep gestures at a minimum, as this can also be seen as an invasion of private space. And going along with this, besides the initial handshake, it's common to avoid physical contact. So no hearty slaps on the back or preemptive hugging or anything like that, as that can be seen as an invasion of personal space. Also, when speaking to the elderly, it's really important to retain respect through nonverbal aspects. So retaining eye contact, keeping your hands out of your pockets, and of course, this goes for conversing with all Swedish people. Try not to interrupt, as that's seen as a very, very negative aspect, and very rude and arrogant. It's also perfectly acceptable to prioritize family and one's health over their occupation. So they have what's called a stress holiday, where you would get two weeks off paid to get your health back in order, to relieve stress. They have stress spas in most of Europe, I should say. Moving on, like most European countries, one is meant to be well kept and clean. This does not mean that you would wear a business suit around all the time, but when going into a business atmosphere in Sweden, it's normal to wear like a suit or a business dress suit or whatever. But wearing flashy or over-the-top $1,000 suits, jewelry, stuff like that can be seen as putting yourself over another person, which goes against Jante law. So don't dress more elaborately than anyone else, pretty much. And orientation to time is extremely important. If you arrive late to a business meeting, for instance, it will reflect very, very poorly on you and will be viewed as a discourteous action. So, to close this presentation, I want to go over some tips in Swedish culture. So, one of the main ones that I found out was try not to yawn during conversations, which can be hard, but this, instead of being seen as a sign of being tired, can be seen as a sign of being nonchalant, rude, arrogant. Also, try not to speak at loudly, I should say, speaking at a calm, almost, I don't want to say monotone, but a very calm level of speaking will be received better. Speaking loudly can be seen as being aggressive, or stuff like that, or revealing negative emotions, I should say. So that is the culture, an overview, I should say, of the culture of Sweden, and hopefully it gives you a little bit more insight on how better to communicate in this diverse, multicultural, and unique culture itself. And I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thank you.